everybody. This is Josh from Thursday Film Club. I'm a little ill today, so I apologise if I sound absolutely disgusting on the recording. But I'm going to talk about Logan, which came out today in the UK. So the premise of the film goes a little something like this. Logan is living with Charles, trying to look after him, trying to basically keeping him dosed up to avoid any of his seizures and to try and keep him safe. Caliban's also there, who's also helping to look after Charles. And basically this young mutant turns up who appears to have all of the same powers as Logan. And she's kind of being pursued by these cyborg mercenaries. And the whole film is kind of a chase film with these kind of corporate dark forces pursuing them, and they're trying to get to this kind of promised land, which may or may not be real. And you know, it's kind of the last ditch attempt at trying to start basically a new life and trying to bring in the next kind of generation of mutants. And what this film does really, really well is it uses the kind of the trappings of a superhero film to discuss human issues. And even though, you know, these characters are superhuman, they're still affected by age, by grief, by guilt. And it really kind of delves deep into what kind of conflicts are going on with these characters. And another thing it does really, really well is how it plays around with genre, in particularly Western genre. The film does a lot to kind of attach itself to Western films. There's kind of a repeated motif of cowboy clothes, and at one point they're watching a Western film on TV, and you know, there's horses, and it's all in kind of rural America, and especially at the start there's a lot of kind of vistas of the desert. The Western film that I'd say Logan's narrative hands itself closest to is Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, where the main character is kind of confronted with his own legend and his own mythos. There's a great scene where Logan reads through a comic book, and you know, you must have seen it on the trailers, but he describes the comic book as ice cream for bedwetters, which, aside from being a great quote, actually it resonates quite well as how, you know, like Logan knows that this wasn't a cartoon, and whatever this comic book is depicting was no doubt a lot more grisly and messy than it's made out to be. Similarly to Clint Eastwood's character in Unforgiven, they both know that what they did was bad, and it's whether or not they can come to terms with that, with their past, and you know, like move past it. There's also a lot of Mad Max, especially in the early parts. I feel there's an awesome like desert chase with kind of motorbikes and trucks, and a lot of vehicular combat. There's a lot of Jeff Nichols' Midnight Special, which came out a couple of years ago, in as much as it's about the role of a caregiver and the genre of a chase movie. I also feel like there's a lot of The Road, again, especially when you first see where Logan and Xavier and Caliban are hiding out. It's this kind of decaying, rusted shack, and it's, you know, in The Road, it's kind of like the world is dying with its characters, and in this, where they're hiding out is very much an extension of the characters. Another thing that was great about it was, I don't think there was a bad performance in the whole thing, but the three main roles, Xavier, Logan, and Laura, were fucking brilliant. I don't think you could ask for any more of any of those actors. This is definitely the best performance Hugh Jackman's given as this character by a long, long way. Xavier, well, Charles is really kind of, it's quite tragic, a lot of the scenes with Charles. And there's great kind of physicality between those two actors, between Jackman and Stewart, where Jackman will be carrying him, you know, like a baby in his arms, and it's very kind of evocative of real life issues where your parents kind of revert back to that kind of infant-like stage. And it's great, like that's what I mean, where it's kind of exploring these human issues. And also Laura, I'm just going to look up the name of the actress, Daphne Keane. This must be her debut role, and I thought she was amazing. I think she was probably my favourite part of the film. There's something about just seeing like this tiny little girl just going absolutely mental on a SWAT team and just tearing them apart. And I don't know how they filmed some of this stuff because it's not. There is CGI in it. There is CGI in it, but a lot of the stunts seem practical. And this girl was just going mad, like just flipping over the backs of people and just going insane, like tearing out throats, just stabbing people in the eyes. You know, somewhere there is a very small female stunt woman who needs a raise. She was great and it looked amazing. So yeah, there's a lot to like in this film. It's quite emotional. It's, as a superhero film, it's definitely a lot more introspective and deeper than anything has been since probably Christopher Nolan's Batman, but I would say it probably goes to another level compared to that. There's probably one that I'm forgetting, I'm sure, but I don't know. I thought it's quite heavy. Quite a lot of it is very heavy, and it goes to places where you wouldn't normally expect these characters to go. But having said that, it wasn't perfect. So the first scene was kind of, this isn't a spoiler, this is the first scene of the film. It's basically Wolverine waking up in the back of his limo because he's working as a limo driver, and some like Latino gangsters are trying to take off his tire hubcaps.
He's just taking his sweet alloys.
His alloys. and yeah, he basically just kind of, you know, ends up going mad on him and tearing him apart. And it doesn't really serve any purpose other than to announce to the audience that this film is going to be, you know, brutal. And it is, and for a lot of it, it's great. You really get to see how a guy who was fucking jacked and had claws coming out of his hands and, you know, could get shot multiple times and not go down. You get to see what it would look like if he was just let loose on a room of people, which is awesome. But, you know, it, like, especially with this opening fight, it doesn't serve a purpose other than to say, you know, this ain't, you know, your fucking granddad's X-Men movie. This is something extreme. Which I think would have had more effect if it hadn't done that and if it had made the audience wait to see Logan properly get let loose. Because the fight scene after that is also the first time, I think it's the first time, you get to see Laura properly take out a whole SWAT team, and them both working together is fucking awesome. And that would have had more impact, I think, if we'd have been made to wait. There's a lot of this film kind of going out of its way to establish itself as something more adult. Like, you know, we get to see boobs in an X-Men film. What's really the point? For about the first kind of 40 minutes of the film, I think every line that Hugh Jackman has fuck in it. And sometimes it comes off as a little bit try-hard, I thought. To back up how kind of try-hard it was, you don't need Wolverine fucking downing half a bottle of whiskey every time we see him. You know, it's a trope to show a broken man, and we can see that he's broken from the first time we see the character. It's obvious that he's fucked, and he is fucked for this whole film. You know, I get that he's probably kind of in constant pain because of his failing healing factor, but for me it came off as a bit tropey, a bit kind of cliche. Okay, a couple more points that kind of I didn't really sit well with me. Richard E. Grant, I thought, was quite underutilized. He's a great actor. He's a great actor for a villain. He doesn't get much screen time in this. But, you know, the other villain, I think, played by Boyd Holbrook, who's the kind of the leader of the Reavers, the kind of cyborg mercenary team. He does a really good job, and that character is quite a lot of fun to watch. So I guess he kind of makes up for it, but I would have liked to see more Richard E. Grant. The final point that I'd like to make in terms of what I didn't like about it, without giving away too many spoilers, there's a weapon that the bad guys have, which in a film that's trying to establish itself as very much a real life setting, not a comic book film, trying to separate itself from those kind of films, the bad guys have this weapon that is very comic bookish. I can see the kind of symbolism behind it, but there's other ways to do that, and in the kind of final kind of climactic fight, it's still a good scene, but it's a little bit too much for me, and I found it quite kind of jarring with the rest of the film. But it didn't really detract too much from my enjoyment. Yeah, it's really, really good. It's quite kind of refreshing for most of it. It's by far, well, it's definitely the best X-Men film. Although I really liked the second one, but I'd probably put this as the highest X-Men film. I will rate this film a 7.8. 7.9. Basically an 8. I guess you could call that an 8, and I wouldn't say you're wrong, but I don't know. Check us out on our various social media platforms. Give us a like and a subscribe. Bye, guys.